Thank you so much for being here today with us and sharing your insights as an artist, as a creative mind. So, I'm going to start with just tell me a little bit about what was the beginning, how you came up to find that art was a way of expressing for you.
That's a
Thank
great question. Well, first of all, thank you, Vivi, for having me here in your program. Super excited to be here and to all friends who are watching. Well, that's a wonderful question. How it all started, right? Like the beginning question.
you.
And
Yes.
I always say, and when I ask that question, I always say that I started my kind of like I discovered I wanted to be an artist and kind of the art thing when I was a child in church. And the reason I say that is because my father is now a retired minister. So when I was a kid, I was always in church because they would take me, they had services and they had meetings. So I was always in church. So my mom, to keep me quiet, she would give me paper and like note cards and a pen. So she always had them in her purse. So she would give them to me. And I would just started to draw and make stories or draw the people that were in front, the choir, and that's how it all started. And then my aunt, who she really liked me, she started to collecting them. So she, my mom would give me the paper, I would make the art, and she would, she didn't let me throw them in the garbage. Like she would actually collect them. So that's
Wow.
kind of how it all started for me. After that, being in that little church making lots of art, I went into study art, and I had that passion. I grew up in Mexico, and so that question also has to do with how I saw my experience as a human being, where in Mexico, there's art everywhere, there's color everywhere. I mean, homes are being painted in beautiful bright colors. There's flowers, Mexico City, you never see snow, so there's always flowers everywhere you look at, and so I was really inspired since I was young into the connection that art brings and the experience what art brings to our humanity. So fast forward many years, I immigrated to the United States in 1988, and as I was here, with my interest in art, I pursued that, and that my education was in art making, painting in particular, and design as well. So I've learned that over the years, what art does to me, and this idea that as artists, as creators, we have this opportunity to make something that wasn't there yesterday. My studio's over there. I can literally walk in my studio today and pick a pen or a pencil or paint and piece of paper, canvas, make something, and that by the time I leave, there's an existing object that wasn't there yesterday that we call art. And not only that as an object, but then that object has the ability to communicate an idea, an emotion, an expression, a moment, a vision, a memory, a dream, you name it, it has that ability. And not only to communicate that on behalf of the artist, but also on the viewer, to be able to connect with a certain image. And that's what I love about art, that there are certain words that you will respond to and I won't, and vice versa. We can, both of us, walk into a museum, and you'll say, oh Sergio, I love that one. I say, no baby, I love that one, right? That's the beauty of it, that art speaks to different people at different times, and it's a language. It's a language that is developed, that we learn to appreciate, we learn to also understand that language, and as artists we learn to communicate through that language.
Ah, this is beautiful. I love it. Everything that you talk about is just so much of, many of the questions that I have for you and the that feeling that I want to transfer to patients and survivors and a lot of their caregivers,
Mm-hmm.
because going through a difficult moment in their lives, they can
Yes.
use the
Oh yeah.
arts to express,
Right.
to create something beautiful, to feel like they are in control or something. So you
Right.
touched so many points. So when we talk about you as an artist, and you mentioned your studio is right there, what is the first step of a creative day for you?
Well, to me, like I cannot just walk in and start making the art. For me, I walk in and I start moving things around. Maybe I clean up a little. Maybe I move things from one side to the other. Maybe I pick up a book and start just looking around. maybe that's all I will do that day. Maybe art doesn't really happen in that day. But then there might be the next day in which I come in, and as I move things around, like I'm ready, and then I start working. And I have right now two pieces that two square paintings, follow up from the series that's behind me. That I'm in the process of discovering, what they are and what they give me. I don't start a painting with a specific idea of what I want. Rather, I start sketching, drawing, laying paint, and then it's like a conversation, like you and I having right now. You ask me a question and then I answer, and that gives you idea for another question. Kind of, that's how I see art making in my case. I walk in and I drop, some imagery or color or paint, and then that will then tell me if it needs more and what direction. So my job as an artist is to kind of like decode, facilitate that ongoing process, and and then be surprised by the outcome. Now, having said that, doesn't mean that I'm just doing this and see what happens. As an artist working with for so long, you learn your style, you learn what you make, and you learn to push and pull and to accommodate the image as it evolves. But to me, that is the process of working into my studio, is that I never know what's going to happen, and sometimes nothing happens, and that is okay. I don't push myself to I have to make something every day. Many artists do, and that's fine. I don't. My methodology of working is very specific in that to me, being an artist is what I do all the time, not only when I work in the studio. So I don't prescribe to the idea like I'm only an artist. When I walk in, I put the artist hat, I take it off, and now I'm something else. But rather, you know, my mind's always thinking about what else I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, and not necessarily just walking in the studio.
That's exactly one thing that I usually, and I'm trying to make the patients and survivors understand that as a creative mind, I feel like I'm always creating. I'm always using things around
Mhm,
and I'm always observing. So, just what you named, all
mhm,
the artists we have had conversations with, we have that in common. We look
mhm.
around, we observe,
Right.
and we absorb. And I love the word you use. We decode
Mhm,
that and we
mhm.
transfer into something that is meaningful. So, tell me a little bit about how you develop the visual language that you have right now.
So over time, as an artist, you start like picking up what are the things that you are going to bring into your own vocabulary, right? Because the things that may interest me and may perhaps not be what interests somebody else, and so on. So based on that, you create your vocabulary that you're going to use, and you add to, as you mature as an artist. um, in my case, for example, the figure, which you will see in just about 99% of my works, once in a
Mhm.
while there's something that there's not a figure, but usually there's some sense of figure there. That's one of my the elements of my visual vocabulary, right? That's an element that for me is super important. To me, it's a way in which I communicate or humanity and our shared experiences. So that is one big element, right? That would be perhaps the most important element in my work, is the figure. And then from there, other um, parts that I have added, of course, color, form. To me, also the idea that the figures are not portraits. You will, even if you see a full figure, you'll never recognize the face. It's almost like in this case, almost like a shadow, an
Mhm.
aura, a light,
Or
you
an
know,
outline, but it's
an
general.
outline.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's more of a universal presence, and to me, is the idea that we are more than what we look like, and that I'm more interested in the presence of the individual, right? Like give you a great example is we are having this conversation, right? So we are here, even though we're not physically in the same space, but we are connected, and we're having this conversation, this moment, right? So I want to remember you by this conversation, by this moment, right? By this presence, and that's what I try to emulate in my painting. The presence of the individual, not the likeness of the individual. So a lot of people might say that some of my work also looks ethereal or spiritual, because I think that's also it's something that we bring in wherever we go as well, and that's part of a again, and I think that connects also to my childhood upbringing, and all those things. At the end your experiences, your influences, your values is what at the end of the day, creates your visual vocabulary, or the thing that you create over and over that you continue speaking about in your work. Usually what comes first is